From a once extremely respected media focused on business and economy, Forbes has now become one of the biggest jokes in the media industry, routinely publishing content so clickbaity it's basically making BuzzFeed cringe.
Why isn't it possible? It's just not.
So how did this race to the bottom happen? How did the magazine that once was arguably the most influential in its field become a struggling mess? To understand, we have to look into how the business model changed over the years. See, back in 1917, when the Forbes magazine was launched by the Forbes family, it was a perfect fit for the existing market. The economy all over the world was booming and people were increasingly educated. And of course, printed magazines were kind of trendy back then. Being the only printed media in its niche, the magazine quickly became a reference. From there, Forbes enjoyed over a decade of continued growth. However, as with any success story, it was eventually catched by the newcomers in its market, Business Week and Fortune. Slowly falling behind the two, Forbes needed to turn the situation around. Back then, there was only one way to stand out, and it was to make the best content.
Literally, all I want to do is make the best food as possible.
Yeah. And that's when the magazine started hiring better and more focused writers and editors. As surprising as it may sound today, this new strategy was centered around creating more factual and accurate content, managing to become the go-to source for reliable business information. While this strategy gave a second wind to the magazine, it was not enough to give it the stellar reputation it managed to acquire later on. The real rocket that shot Forbes into the sky, leaving the competition to fight for second place, came in 1982, when the magazine started publishing the Forbes Richest 400 list, a list of the 400 wealthiest Americans. Back then, the list was topped by oil operation owners, real estate magnates, and other entrepreneurs. Very different from today's techies.
So is that a joint?
This would strike the reader's curiosity in a way that had rarely been done before, and this resulted in growth that would have been unimaginable for the magazine before that. Seeing how much their readers love this type of content, Forbes basically started listing every single thing that can be listed. World's most powerful people, highest paid athletes, largest public companies, America's top college, you name it, they listed it. And so on, reaching far and wide to appeal to the masses. Even today, one could easily attribute the list type of content, which is still very popular on YouTube and other media platforms, to Forbes. However, while this strategy allowed them to gain an audience that was wider and more diverse than ever before, it is also what set them on the path to their doom. It goes without saying that the more content you push out, the less time you can invest into each article. That's what started happening. By publishing content that was increasingly wide in its appeal, what would later turn into clickbait content, Forbes started losing track of what made it famous in the first place: quality.
All downhill from here.
Facts would turn into opinions, and opinions would later turn into very arguable statements. Claims would go unverified, frequently leading to polarizing articles, and this in turn led to lower and lower levels of trust from the readers. However, we were still before the internet era, and the wind was about to change in a major way. Just as it seemed that Forbes was headed to an early grave, something happened. The internet boom. And while it might seem crazy to talk about this today, in the early days of the www, everyone was still trying to figure out whether this was going to stick or not, and if it was worth investing in. As controversial as Forbes is today, no one can argue that the magazine was not visionary. While other medias were still pondering, Forbes saw the potential and dove right in. While they were still surfing on their historical value from when they were actually pumping out legitimate content, they also started investing heavily in SEO. This, coupled with their crazy clickbaity content, made Forbes lead the way in the internet and social media content arena. And just to be clear, it was not a copycat strategy at that point. They were literally paving the way to what would later become the most obnoxious yet successful business strategy for any media company out there. And I mean, they literally went all in. Except at this point, they started giving less and less importance to their printed magazine, which to that point was still their bread and butter. They also committed to what is required for any internet media company, and that is a near infinite amount of content. So what do you do when you have a gigantic reach? You need to pump out outrageous amounts of content, and on top of that, you need to print absurd amounts of money to keep the music from stopping. Well, you let others write for you, and not only do you not pay them, you charge them for it. That's right, Forbes opened the gates to sponsored content. This would be the last drop to completely kill the cohesion of the magazine. Since basically anyone could write whatever they please on one of the most widely read platforms in the world, people came in with their own agendas. Politics, economics, business and culture would now be presented from extremely biased perspectives, trying to sway the audience one way or the other. Forbes also started giving less and less thought into their content, focusing only on their numbers. After all, that was now what they were selling. They stopped caring about getting content to readers, they were now selling readers to writers. It is fair to say that today the credibility of Forbes is the same as that of any other media. Long gone are the days of factual supremacy. And while the company announced its intention of going public in 2021, which would have lifted the veil on its finances, it later retracted in 2022, stating that the market had changed. Rumors are that Forbes is still for sale for around $800 million, but fails to find a buyer for that price. And while achieving an $800 million valuation is no small feat, it is still light years away from the billions of dollars it was worth in the past. This being said, the rumored aggressive intention of selling or monetizing might just be Forbes' swan song.
Sell me this pen.
And for that, only time will tell. If you like this type of content, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.